happened at International Airport, it actually occurred at Lockheed Airport due to weather conditions. Notice the automobile, and it was intended to be a decoy. The need for it never materialized. Newsmen at the scene can become a problem, especially if a hostile element such as the freedom fighters is present. At one time during this visit, it became necessary to rescue a newsman from the crowd. Because McCoyan was a highly controversial figure and due to intelligence information that freedom fighters might precipitate an incident, plainclothes officers were deployed within the crowd to be alert for possible danger and to interrogate suspicious persons. The crowd shift in this scene was caused by a newsman interviewing a former classmate of McCoyan's. In this instance, control was maintained, but it can readily be seen that the unexpected surge of a crowd could be a problem if the area was not adequately policed. Tight security was not maintained at the entrance to the Ambassador Hotel during the McCoyan visit. It is apparent in this scene that the unrestricted movement of newsmen and photographers can impede the movement of the visitor's party and thereby become a problem. Security must also be maintained within the building at all functions. This scene shows McCoyan leaving the Ambassador on the second day of his visit and illustrates that departures from the buildings must be adequately policed. Unexpected moves by the visiting party, such as the handshaking incident in this scene during the departure from Perino's restaurant, point out the need for flexibility and alertness in maintaining security. Airport departures generally require the same security measures as airport arrivals. However, the crowd would not usually be as large. This concludes the McCoyan film. In the Khrushchev film which follows, it will be noticed that at all locations, except the 20th Century Fox visit, crowds, newsmen, and photographers were more tightly controlled. This was necessary because Mr. Khrushchev was an official guest of the United States, having been invited here by President Eisenhower. Tactics learned during the McCoyan visit were of considerable help in the planning. Briefing sessions were held to assign duties, define responsibilities, and to coordinate activities. Thorough briefing cannot be overemphasized. Traffic control is an important phase of any security operation. In this case, major intersections required policing 2 to 3 hours in advance of the arrival. Entrance to the security area was restricted to one gate to provide maximum security. All personnel, police or otherwise, had to be cleared at this point. The black Cadillac was occupied by 7 members of the press. 5 of them had proper identification. Two did not and required a further check. Proper parking facilities had to be provided for vehicles such as these buses, which were used to transport the press. As the entrance location became apparent, a crowd gathered, necessitating adequate control. This was the arrival of Mr. Khrushchev. Officers were stationed facing the spectators at this point to prevent incident. The bleachers were erected for the press and proved very satisfactory both to the press and the fleet. Personal security was the responsibility of the Detective Bureau, together with the security officers of the Department of State. The responsibility for crowd control at the airport was placed upon the commander of the Patrol Bureau. The motorcade formation area should be in close proximity to the arrival area to facilitate a rapid departure. The helicopter was used to good advantage for overhead surveillance of the scene. Air-to-ground radio contact was maintained, making a last-minute exit decision possible. Studio security initially accepted responsibility for protection. However, when it became inadequate, police security assisted. Vulnerable locations, such as the window at the end of the head table, are often overlooked by private security agencies. Details such as these point out the need for experienced planning. This was the controversial can-can dance, which evoked much criticism from Mr. Khrushchev, who was not impressed with their smiling faces. The balcony was constructed as a security measure by the studio. Exit from the studio again illustrated the inadequacy of private police agencies in controlling departures such as this. Crowd control such as this is the result of extensive planning. Public thoroughfares must be kept open for normal travel. Normal business, such as the arrival and departure of hotel guests, had to be directed to an entrance other than that used for the arrival of Mr. Khrushchev. Pedestrian traffic was facilitated by uniformed officers stationed on the sidewalk. The Khrushchev visit was the first major event where pre-planning included the use of the Mobile Command Post. This experience will benefit its future use. It will be noticed that the arrival of the motorcade at the hotel was very orderly. It was necessary for plainclothes security officers to hurriedly precede Mr. Khrushchev into the hotel to assume their assigned posts within the hotel. Prior to this arrival, the hotel had been completely searched and secured. A complete search of the entire train and area was made prior to the arrival of Mr. Khrushchev at the depot. Special planning was needed for the arrival of the motorcade. It became necessary to place Mr. Khrushchev's car at the rear of the motorcade. This required liaison with the protocol officer of the Department of State. The motorcade was stopped short of the railroad car where Mr. Khrushchev was going to enter. This provided an opportunity for press photographers to obtain pictures. Officers were placed at strategic locations such as loading platforms, roofs of structures and buildings. A construction shack at the location was used as a command post. The adjacent railroad tracks were kept clear as a security measure. LAPD officers maintained their stations on the train until after the departure from the city to guarantee security. This concludes the Khrushchev film.